That's Hey Violet and Hoodie on Magic this morning. A happy sunny Tuesday. Way different than it was yesterday at this time, temperature-wise as well. We mentioned Mike Barrett joining us from Barrett Insurance this morning. Mike, good morning.
Good morning.
Coffee in hand.
Java always in hand. Yes.
I have my half gallon. Is that a half gallon? Half gallon.
That's a half gallon of sugar that's colored orange.
Orange juice.
Yes.
My half gallon of coffee there. Good to have you in here.
Nice to be here.
We had quite a weather event here, not just here in the Northeast Kingdom, but through the North Country, New Hampshire as well. Last week, Mike, we started a conversation where we were talking about homeowners insurances and how that works out. Let's talk about folks like me. We don't own a home. Never will. There are other ways to cover your belongings.
There are. And this is probably the most overlooked homeowner policy available. It's got multiple names in my world, so we'll give you all of them.
Okay.
So it's called a tenant homeowner policy. It's also called a renter's insurance policy. And we also call them HO4s.
Is that because that's the form number?
That's the form number.
Okay.
Ta-da, you're good. You're
so
good.
We're basically talking about folks that somebody else owns a property you're paying to live there, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And one of the biggest things that people make a mistake on is they assume that when they are in a property and they don't own it and they're just living there and they've got their personal belongings there, that if something was to happen, I'm sure the landlord will cover it or something. Never the case. Never the case.
Well, let me just, I don't want to jump in and cut you off here short here, but let me just share with you my experience. Now, I am a happy tenant. I love where I live. My landlord's an amazing guy. I'm sitting here.
Does that get your rent knocked down every once in a while when you do that?
No, but they have been taking care of me
Okay,
since day one.
Good.
But I'm sitting here and I'm having my chat earlier on with Dr. Hoppy, right? And my phone rings. Mm-hmm. My landlord. Thankfully, he butt dialed me, but I am one of many people without electricity. So my instant fear was, because my girlfriend last night scolded me for not having renter's insurance.
Yes, sir.
Was that the power came on and my place was burning to the ground. So this is the kind of thing that renter's insurance will cover.
It is. There are so many things there. So let's get into the nuts and bolts of it. What is a homeowner policy for a tenant or a renter? It's essentially a homeowner. It's going to look very similar to a homeowner policy for somebody who owns their home, but rather than having coverages A and B, which are dwellings, so instead of having the home and other structures, the coverage starts at C, which is personal property. And then you have D, which is loss of use. And then you have L and M, or some companies continue the alphabet from the C and D onto E and F. But we won't get into that because that's confusing as all get out. But it's got liability and medical payments to others.
L and M.
Exactly. And all of those components are vital for everybody. So let's back up a little bit. Let's go to coverage C, personal property. So where I go to a house and say, look, here's what your house replacement value is. You need to insure for X. For a renter's policy, you, as the insured, come to me and say, I need renter's insurance. I go, how much personal property do you think you have? Do you have 10,000? Do you have 25, 50, 75, 100, 200? I've seen it run the gamut from as low as 10, which is typically the lowest most companies will go, into the hundreds of thousands, depending on the people. But it's very important because if there's a loss at the house, whether it be a fire where it damages the structure, your personal belongings are not covered unless you have a renter's insurance policy. But like you just thought, okay, power's back on, boom, things are fried. You want to make sure you have coverage if you have a surge of electricity coming through the house. That's a big thing. But let's go to the most remedial thing for you, okay? Right now, you've been without power for how long?
A couple of days.
Couple of days.
Close.
Once your refrigerator's off for over 4 hours, your perishables are not safe to consume. Typically. Okay. That being the case, a renter's insurance policy, regardless of the deductible you have, and the same held true for a regular homeowner, you have up to $500 for refrigerated food loss. So if you had a couple $100 worth of food in there, that's gone. Jeff's got lobster tails and filet mignon because that's what he eats all the time.
Not on this salary, but no.
But, the thing of it is that not subject to your policy deductible, you would have coverage up to $500. That's key. I mean, that's a lifesaver. So let's talk about the L&M part of it now. Actually, no, I jumped. Let's go back a little bit.
Okay.
Let's go to loss of use. Now the place you've lived in has caught fire, unable to live there. Now you've got additional expense in your life because you have to find alternative place to live. Loss of use coverage is in there. Not a huge limit. It's 20. I think it's 40% of whatever you have for coverage C is that limit. But still, that's going to help you out. Okay. Now we can jump to liability. It's worldwide liability. So anything that's not excluded would be covered. So excluded liability would be medical pay or liability from an auto accident for sure. That's a guarantee. But let's think, maybe you're at White's and you're going down the aisle and you turn and you knock the sweet, elderly woman over who now breaks her hip. You're liable for that injury. Or you hit a golf ball and you injure somebody. You're liable for that injury. Liability from your policy will protect you if your negligence causes bodily injury or property damage to others. So it's really good to have. And there's a lot of other components, like you can schedule computers and have proper protection for a lot of different devices. Now let's talk about cost.
I was just going to say, now, like I mentioned, my girlfriend and I were talking about renter's insurance last night. It isn't a ton of money.
Right. It's not. Sorry, just my phone went off and I'm looking at it.
Good business.
I got to make sure I'm checking. It's just a cousin of mine harassing me.
Good policies.
Good policies. So let's talk about costs. So let's talk about the basic one. You're probably looking between $130 to $150 a year. So give or take $10 a month, you have renter's insurance. What's the one insurance policy I know you have right now?
Obviously, auto insurance.
All right. So let's say that you have an auto insurance policy let's just use easy math because I'm still drinking coffee here. Let's say you have a $1,000 a year auto insurance policy.
Okay.
You go to that same company and say, you know what? I'm going to have a renter's insurance policy. Sure. What do you want for coverage? I want this. Well, that'll be $150 a year for that. Excellent. Now you go, by the way, now I've got two policies with you, so I get an account credit, right? Yes, you do. Typically between 13 to 15%, depending on the company. So if you're saving,
it washes out.
It washes out. Or it may be $20 or $30 more a year total to have both. So it is absolutely a no-brainer to do this. So if you don't have renter's insurance, please get it. I can tell you right now, I've seen people involved in losses with renters policies that just don't know how they would have handled it without.
Okay, here's a quick question for you because we got to button this thing up here
Please,
with good policies.
Yes.
But let's say, for example, Joe has a snow machine on his rental property. It's not in the building. Is that covered?
No.
Okay. So it's got to be within the dwelling?
No, it doesn't have to be within the dwelling.
But
you gave an example of something subject to motor vehicle registration, which would need to have its own policy. But if you do it, if you're renting a place that you have things in your house and then you have things in a garage or a storage unit outside, absolutely that's going to be covered, subject to exclusions. And the exclusions mirror the same exclusions on a regular homeowner policy in terms of things that aren't covered, which again would be things subject to motor vehicle registration. So ATVs, snowmobiles, motorcycles, vehicles.
So these are the questions people are going to be calling and asking you and the crew.
Yes, and it's such an important thing to have, and yes, extra money is extra money, but if you can save some, do it.
Save some. A penny saved is a penny saved.
Right.
All right.
I mean, think about the house that was crushed underneath a bridge going down the river in Windham, New Hampshire that said they never would have a flood. Did you see that?
No, I'll have to go online.
You have to look for that.
Give them the number and contact information for Barrett Insurance.
748-5224. Visit our website, thebarrettagency.com, or on Google, Facebook, and YouTube as Barrett Insurance Agency.
And, of course, join the Magic Morning Crew Tuesdays, 8:35. We will share with you good policy information.
Yes, and today, for those that need to know, I'm dressed as a scary insurance agent for Halloween.
He looks like one. Music coming up from Ellie Goulding on Magic.